Welcome to the UST Education recorded webinar series. This session is powered by US Transactions. UST is a boutique payment processing firm providing you with personalized service. We offer agnostic, best fit technology solutions for associations, nonprofits, and enterprise clients.
Awesome. So I think that if I could learn one skill almost immediately, my 7-year-old is really into Pokemon cards right now. And so I would want to know all the things because it seems like 30 years, 25 years of details I have missed. So thanks for joining today. We're going to talk about building education pathways and what you can do to increase engagement, retention, and revenue, and really looking at education as that tool. So we're going to kick off with a question here. Looking at your education benefit today, where would you like it to be from 12 months from now? And there's an A through D. Go ahead and type in into the chat how you would like that to look 12 months from now. Awesome. Seeing a little bit of everything here between A and B, hold steady and also modest expansion. So a lot of growth and expansion here. I love that. Okay. So here's what we're facing in the association space is really a lack of engagement. People are just being inundated with information, social media, people that don't have authority in your space providing education. There's a lot of distraction, and we're all fighting for attention. And so data shows us that 20 to 30% of our members are actively engaged. You know, they may be present for CE credits once a year or multiple times a year, but in between then, engagement is really, struggling. So in your association, this is another question. What share of your members would you say are actively engaged? They're using benefits, attending events, and opening communications and emails that you're sending. I know email's gotten tough over the last 5 years. Under 20, under 20, 45, 20 to 40. Okay, so it looks a lot like the data is pretty well represented here. So a piece of this that we're really fighting an uphill battle on is first year retention. And so across the board, year over year, associations are seeing an 84% median renewal rate across their entire membership. But that gap really hits us hard on that first year. We go and drop 1 in 4 from year 1 to year 2. And I have a lot of things that we've done with associations over the last 3 years that have really helped address that first year gap and what people are facing here. So what does that cliff cost you in terms of revenue? So the biggest thing is that even if you're experiencing increases in your P&L in other areas like events or in education, if your numbers are dropping, you're going to plateau, even if you're steadily increasing. And so offsetting that decline is tough. Compounding churn. So this is an issue that incrementally impacts you down the line because as you lose people in year 1 and in between years 3 and 4, that just has more downstream incremental effect. And then we're really, providing access to the members that are engaged. And essentially they're paying for services that are meant to be provided for everyone else when they leave. So this is what the number looks like. I think this visual helps me say that, you're underserving roughly 75% of the people that you already have if your engagement is 25%. And so what are the ways as associations that we can capture that 75%? One of the things that we can do is make sure that we're mapping out how we can create education that serves people at all levels of their career. If we're creating one webinar series to all 4 of these populations, we're ultimately serving one population instead of all of our populations. Now, just given that I know who's in the room, I think it's important to say that renewal rates and those that have licensing requirements and have mandatory CE, they have higher retention rates and have higher participation rates. But let's just, for today's conversation, as we go on this journey together and consider these other populations, think of that mandatory CE as the floor. And so let's look at all the other opportunities that you have to grow, for multiple courses, multiple credentials, providing mastery and really serving all of these populations we're going to talk about today. And so if I can just ask all of us to think, my goal for all of us is to walk away with one new idea that you can implement to dramatically increase enroll to dramatically increase membership, and actual revenue associated with your education. And so these are six populations. We're going to go into a little bit into the tools that you can employ to have a dramatic increase in revenue for the association. So one of those is going to be future members. So if you have an aging population of the workforce, um, I think that it's important to think about how we can get future members or people that are pre-career funneled into the organization and to the association. These are the people with the most lifetime value to your organization and this can be a nice stream of revenue. Also, we're looking at can we better serve those new members? How can we retain more of them? And then the mid and senior levels of their career. For me, this is the toughest part of education because they're looking for more specialization. It's more custom at that point. And then how can you, and this is something that we've helped associations with over the last 3 years, is how can you extend education benefits and be a one-stop shop resource for education for the family members and adult children of your members. There's a big revenue opportunity we'll talk about here. And then also career switchers, both people that are looking to move into the professions that you work with, and also those that are looking to transfer outside of it. So let's get a question going here. Beyond your core CE and credentialing programs, how would you describe your current member education offering? Do you focus on CE? Do you layer in webinars and microlearning? Do you have partnerships with colleges and credentialing providers on top of those things? Or are you just actively rebuilding what you're going to do? Lots of A's.
Yeah, some
E.
D's, some B's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Thanks for that. So I founded a company called EduTrust 3 years ago. Been in higher education most of my adult career. I've spent 10 years really focused on working with working adults that are looking to advance their careers and working between higher ed institutions, education companies, and associations, labor unions, and just direct, prospective students that are looking to go back to school and helping those organizations and the prospective students really map what they need and creating pathways. And so what that has done is really moved education out of just looking at it as a member benefit and using education as an engine that really drives that retention and provides the value that your members are looking for. And so just taking a step back on the retention side, let's say you retain 75% of your members. So if you have an organization of 10,000 members, that's 7,500 members retained. With a 10-point lift, that's an additional 1,000 members. And so the way that we look at this in terms of addressing retention is that we're looking at the impact on the bottom line for the organization, for the association. And the reason this is important is that we're in a nonprofit setting and we have limited resources in the association space. And it's really important for us to deploy resources into areas that can secure and generate revenue. And so that's what we're looking at on this, just purely adding 1,000, retaining an additional 1,000 members would, obviously create that 1,000 extra members. You would lose 1,000 less, makes sense, right? And then you would retain an extra $300,000 in dues. And if it costs you $200 in acquisition cost to get a member, you would actually save $200,000. And so the net impact of this retention lift just right off the top of solving this issue across, several ways is an additional $500,000 in revenue to the association and the bottom line. And so the point I'm trying to make here, knowing that we have people in the room from associations of, 100,000 members to 5,000 members or less, that addressing engagement at your size is incremental impact across the funnel. So let's dig into these six populations that we have developed, tools and methods that associations can use to improve retention and to add new members. And so on the future member side, these are people that aren't already a part of the workforce in your association. And so these are people like high school students, community college students, working, entering credentialed fields, and the families that are guiding them. This doesn't necessarily mean that these are 18 to 24-year-olds. These could be people in 35 to 45 that have spouses and family members. One of the biggest bumps that we see on the institutional side in higher ed is in January and after Thanksgiving, because everyone goes home and everybody in their family wants to know what it is they're going to do with their life. And so these are big opportunities for associations to have a presence. And so I was just meeting with an association the other day who was talking about how their workforce is aging out and they have an issue with bringing new people into the field. And so there are some new tools that we can use, especially because this population sometimes has an economic barrier to being able to move into the field that you are working with. And so there are some new things that are happening inside higher education and in the areas of federal funding that you can consider working towards to help address this gap that we're going to walk through today. Also, working with employers. Employers are inundated with thousands of resumes when they used to get 50 because everyone is using AI and other types of technology to really sort of disorient the typical funnel that employers have seen in being able to hire. And so working hand in hand with employers and creating a pathway there where they're hiring out of your association, potentially after you educate them in a new area, is a really interesting way to develop those partnerships. And then, of course, there are event opportunities as well where you can bring those employers in a sponsorship format, which can help, increase participation there. And then this isn't going to work for all of the associations in the room, but looking at family-facing spouses, parents, and really, even if these prospective students are in higher ed, looking at pathway content to help establish what it is that your association members are doing at work and helping them understand what it would look like to make those career decisions and really supporting them here. And I said this before, like these are the biggest lifetime value investments that you'll have because if you get them at the beginning of their career, it gives you an opportunity to serve them and provide value over the length of the terms that they're here. And so I should have made a question around how many of you have heard about what's happening with Workforce Pell, but this is really the biggest change to federal funding for education that has happened in a decade. It used to be that you had to take a full degree program to qualify for federal Pell Grants, which is roughly $5,250 in free money towards your education. It used to be that you needed a full program. Now you can use this money to take courses that are 8 to 15 weeks. And so that opens up higher education to providing certificates, boot camps, and credentials that they haven't before. Now, this is the beginning of the road with Workforce Pell, and it's going to be a slow road because the guidance that they've rolled out is very complicated and they've just put some hurdles in front of just like really everyone in being able to implement this quickly. And so it's going to roll out slow. So what this does is it gives higher ed the ability to match federal aid to 8-week certs, and then they can qualify for Pell. Then those programs can be paid for. They're going to be more in the $1,000 to $3,000 range. It's probably not going to be providing a bunch of people with $5,000 a year. Now, this is a way that you can provide a gateway for workers that can't afford to enter your field because they can't afford a $500 to $800 to $1,500 course or pathway that you've developed. It gives them an alternative. And then it gives you an opportunity to sort of sack this with what you've already done and created internally. So there's a couple of things to watch out for. And if you're looking to roll out and partner with an institution that's offering Workforce Pell, um, you can reach out to me or I can provide you some information around what to watch out for here. But essentially, this isn't going to be something that everyone is going to roll out exactly the same across the US. It's being determined on a state by state basis. What are the in-demand career paths that need to be accepting Workforce Pell? And so every state is going to be providing pathways and funding for different programs potentially because there's no communication happening between states. And so if Purdue Global in Indiana decides to roll out a nursing program for Workforce Pell, they anybody in the US can take it, but if they're in Utah and they want to take it online, they're not going to be able to do that and get Pell unless they are also in a state that allows it. And so it's going to, as I'm showing here, it is definitely going to be a complicated thing that institutions are trying to find their way through. But the best part, and this is the biggest change that we're seeing, is that for an institution to offer this, they have to be able to show outcomes. And so I think it's right now, and this is all in flux because the guidance isn't set yet, but it looks like 70% of the graduates within the first 6 months will have to be employed in that area. And so it's going to provide a lot of accountability on the institution to be providing programs with strong outcomes. If you have questions about this, hold on to me to the end and we can jump back into this at the end. Okay, moving to population two here, we are looking at new members and addressing that first year retention rate. I think one of the biggest opportunities I've seen talking to associations is bundling what you already have into a pathway because it really provides that step-by-step engagement of what is the outcome of being a member at the end of year one. We have limited resources. We can't go out and build brand new, courses if we have other things happening within the association. So looking at combining what you have and giving them a pathway is a better way to keep them engaged and to honestly increase the education revenue coming from within that first year. Another thing that you can look at is articulation agreements with institutions. So if the pathway is that you want to provide courses to them in a bundle over the first year in a pathway, if you reach out to an institution, a college or a university that's regionally accredited in the US, they can give those students that go through that coursework credit towards their degree. And so this is something, negotiating articulation agreements is something that a lot of really progressive, high quality institutions that are built to serve your adult students are doing to develop relationships with associations. And so this is a huge opportunity because if you can secure the revenue there and you don't have to feel like education, that bringing in higher ed is going to take revenue away from you, it's looking at it as an opportunity to have them be able to move those credits into the degree program and then they don't have to pay for those credits. So it's a win-win for everyone, really. Um, you can roll out an education benefit. This is something that we've helped 20,000 prospective students with in the association and union space, is creating a benefit with particular institutions in the US that will provide substantial discounts for your students. And so we're not talking about 10% off. We're not talking about even 20% off. It's, 50 to 50 per year. You can complete one of our institutions, really great school for adults, is actually limiting if you have 45 credit hours already in college, you can graduate for a total of, I think it's $6,000 to complete your bachelor's degree. So there's a lot of opportunities there if you are serving, the millions of adults that have some college credit and no degree, but would benefit from that. Providing that pathway and that relationship with the institution can be a way to really provide value and secure that member for life. So mid-career here is where we're looking to help people build towards advancement. And they're really looking at if I do this, I'm busy, I have kids, I have a family, I'm in the middle of my career. I need to know that I'm going to get ROI on what it is that we're doing together. And so if I'm going to complete my degree or complete an advanced certificate or degree, I need to understand what that payoff is. I think, engagement with this population is difficult. However, if you provide, the ROI and the payoff on what it is that that math looks like, um, this is a population that engaging, even if it's at a 5%, can have massive impact on retention and engagement. Oops, I went backwards. I was like, new again. Okay, so senior members. So members that get to this point can be involved in the association. They're the most loyal part. They're also like on a, sort of this like recurring wheel. This is what I do with my association. And so looking at this population in a different way, helping build out specialty certifications and different pathways that you can provide them that help keep them engaged, and looking at, do I want to move, how do I want to move up in my career, and looking at partnerships for doctoral and capstone level programs can help keep that segment engaged and ready to move forward. And then this is a population that not a lot of associations are thinking about. It's the family members. We talked about this a little bit so far, but looking at having an opportunity to, I guess it's like if you're an association member and you can go to your 24-year-old child who is, maybe had some college experience but left, or is, struggling to figure out what they want to do with their life, by being able to extend your association benefit onto them is something that's really highly valued in a really like individual, sincere way. And so, working with institutions to offer tuition discounts, articulation agreements for programs, and pathways for adult students that are family members can be a pathway to really earning the trust and relationship with that association member for a lifetime. And so, looking at those numbers, if you have an association with 10,000 members, the family members involved there could be 25 to 30,000, prospective. Well, they're not all going to be prospective students, but additional people that are an audience potentially for this benefit. And one of the really cool things that we've set up here at EduTrust is that we work with institutions that will pay for those handoffs. Like if they have let's say you have a adult family member who's interested in completing their bachelor's degree, um, and you hand those off, they're willing to put a set amount of money into a scholarship for your association members. So it's kind of a cool handoff where, the association member is able to, wrap their arms around the family member and provide them a discounted pathway at a high quality institution. But then that those costs, those leads that are created with the institution are creating revenue for your other members to pursue education within your association. And so that revenue typically can come back to you as they spend those dollars towards education internally. So kind of a cool way of setting this up that allows you to really reinvest back into your members. And then we have career switchers. And I think this is a big opportunity for also, not looking past higher education and partnerships. I think a good example here is looking at an association that serves principals of K-12 and looking at, you know, if you create a bundled pathway, because a lot of principals will go and look at wanting to be a superintendent and they have additional credentials that they would need to secure to be able to do that. And so creating these bundled pathways around destinations that your members are looking to go to, and then partnering with higher ed, because in a lot of these situations, we can't ignore higher ed because these aren't things that an association can provide on their own, but really guiding those members through that decision. You can get them faster completion by the articulated credits. You can help them save 20% more or less off of their actual credentials. And there's a potential pathway for workforce Pell in some situations. Obviously, this superintendent one may not be the best fit for that, but depending on where your members are actually trying to go, you could get them a pathway to a credential that is paid for entirely by Pell. And so here's this is a game of inches, right? Like not you're not going to go out in the next 6 months and implement all these ideas. They wouldn't be the perfect fit for all of you. However, just looking at these line by line item, it's a game of inches because 4% increases and 5% increases dramatically shift participation and engagement there. And so if we're looking at serving future members, let's say we develop a pathway of 500 new certificate completion at $400 a piece, it generates $200,000 in additional revenue for the association. Um, Looking at that lift in retention of 10% that we looked back at in the beginning of the presentation, looking at 1.25 million in annual revenue. Rolling out the family members, some institutions will do it on a cost per enrollment, like they'll do a revenue share, or they could do the CPL idea where they're putting money towards your scholarships you provide your members. And then career switchers, if you had 450 enrollments and people that are looking to move out or into or within your association, and you were able to develop $2,500 bundle pathways, it's 1.1 million in annual revenue. And so the way that I would encourage you to do this, and the way that we've been able to get big things done between associations and institutions, is by really mapping out what that ROI on your time as you work for the association and that investment in resources looks like in terms of potential annual revenue. Oh, back again. And so just like at a really high level, um, these are, and I'm gonna, if you'd like to receive this presentation, I think this is a good high level overview of what the biggest strategies and tools are that you can use for each of these different populations. And so I think, associations are meant to simplify things for the workforce and have a unique ability to serve what is a really big gap for adults across the US. And so, you know, with AI and what's happening in education and non-credit across the US, and as fast as that's changing, the challenge that we have is that if we don't solve some of these passes, if we're not leading our association members to the path that you want them on, we run the risk of losing them to other people that are providing it. And I think that, you know, one of the things that comes with having so much access to information everywhere, online, social media, AI, um, other course providers, is that they're really looking for an authority. And that's going to be over the next decade, the biggest challenge that we all face, personally and professionally, is what are we paying attention to and who are we believing? And the association space has a real opportunity to step into that space and expand, those other 75% that we aren't engaging on a daily and weekly basis, with showing them what matters and what to be paying attention to and what they need to be learning in terms of what's next and next and next. And so each of these populations potentially creates a leak in your retention rates as education and information becomes a commodity over the next decade as AI expands. And so when we go to implement something like this, we can't do all of these things at once. And so if we want to pick a pilot, let's say we want to roll out a new pathway for new members because our workforce is aging out and we're concerned about, really filling our association and the employers that they work for with new workforce. We would need to really be able to map out for that population and the others, where are our biggest gaps? And then look at 2 or 3 pathways for each of these populations that we could map out over the next, let's say, 2 years. Um, because we are resource limited in most cases, being able to find the right partners that will complement and not compete with or cannibalize existing programs. A lot of associations are in a position where they need to look externally for being able to layer things on top of what you're already doing. And so aligning those partners and looking at relationships with high quality, partnerships is really the next step. And, just scheduling a couple of calls. If you're not sure who to reach out to at an institution or at a non-credit provider, um, you know, happy to talk to you about, who's providing the best um, outcomes for your particular area at the association. And then just pick one. Put together an ROI use case and build out a resource plan that allows you to pilot this over 6 months. And you don't have to jump to $1.4 million. You can look at a 4% increase and really watch the math and see what happens before, throwing in on all six. And then once you've learned what you need to learn about that, you've got the right partners in place. It's really about scaling and leaning into the methodologies and the math that you've created around your ROI, and providing real value um, and information about what they need to be looking at in their pathways to really, accomplish what they need to do. So if your members need to keep learning, the only question is whether you are the door to that learning or if someone else is.
Mhm.
Sorry, my screen just like blinked out and came back. Okay, so this, as I mentioned, I work for a company called EduTrust, which helps create partnerships between higher education employers associations. Um, and the way that a partner can sort of fit in here is between the association and the partner institution, and really using that relationship to accomplish scale. Because if EduTrust has the ability to bring in, 5,000 students across all our relationships, then that gives us more ability to, add more revenue to your scholarship funds and negotiate for lower cost tuition rates for your members. And so that's something that can kind of from day one, help from a compliance perspective and getting it done in a way that's compliant and finding the highest quality institutions that can really meet the quality and the type of benefit that you'd be looking at wanting to roll out.
And hey, John,
Yeah.
just jumping in real quick. This has been great. And before we jump into next steps and what you have from there, I thought maybe we could do one more question. And
Okay,
I'm just
cool.
going to put it in the chat. And it is, do you reach out to your members about where they are at in their careers and what education might help them? So it's one thing to say we offer education, we might have an LMS, we might have courses, webinars, etc. But do you reach out? So here comes some answers now. Yes, yes. Okay. I think it's a logical question to sort of ask, and it's of course part of the CAE element of this as well. But I think it's a pertinent thing to ask of the group here and everyone in the group to kind of ask of their organization as well.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. And I was just reminded of one of the things that I recently came across was that an association was reaching out, but only to the people that were actually already taking that were
Yeah,
already participating in education. And so finding creative ways to reach out to the ones that aren't engaging is as important as finding and, serving the ones that are. And so sometimes it takes more than an email.
yeah. And to that point, Jen, what's, if an association is on this call and they're thinking, well, this is great, but what kind of messaging around this tends to work? How do we resonate with, a member and, even the extension into their family, but just talk about maybe their member first. Like what's the best way to talk about this and what's not the best way to talk about uh, education benefits like this?
Well, I think that, organizing your offerings in a way that meets the needs of your members is the most important thing. Being able to really customize the way that you're reaching out. And so I would just received an email before as I was preparing from AARP. And I was struck by the fact that a lot of the a lot of the education offerings that they were providing to me and a lot of the benefits they were providing me were to my particular situation. And
Hmm.
so they're looking at not just sending the same email out to everyone, they're wanting to send it out in a very specific way to their members so that it is as highly relevant to them as possible. And so the most customization and personalization that we can do, and that's something that AI is awesome at, is being able to take data sets and help you break down how you can really pull out what you offer in a unique way so that it really is relevant to them. Because as we said before, like if you create one webinar for people in all four stages of their career, you're not serving all four areas of your association at the same time. And so that personalization and customization is super critical.
And can you talk a little bit about how certifications and blend in with particular programs that can be offered out there by institutions? Is it just degree programs? Can it be certifications, credentialing? What's the sort of the gamut of programs that an institution could offer an association to their members?
So right now we're sending out marketing to roughly 15 million union members. And I can say that roughly of the programs represented in the benefit, only maybe 15% of them are certificates, but roughly 40% of our lead volume is for certificates. And so people really are looking for that low barrier entry,
Hmm.
way to engage. What they're really looking for is ones that are stackable, that if they take three, can they add those to their bachelor's degree? Because there's thousands of dollars that can be saved that way on the certificate side. And these are non-credit certificates that really build into a pathway for a full undergraduate degree. And it allows them to really play around in different areas that they wouldn't normally take a full degree program in to see what they want. Because, I mean, if you ask someone between ages 24 and 50, if they don't have their degree, what they want to do, a large percentage of them still would come in as undecided if you let them. And so
Hmm.
giving them those little pieces of ways to move forward and try new things and learn new things gives them a better opportunity of really completing and stacking in a really affordable way to complete.
Yeah, cool. And for someone that's saying I'm kind of sold on this, we don't have a degree type of program, how can they gauge if their members are the right kind of fit for this? Is it do a pilot messaging? Is it surveying? How can they judge demand on their side? Is it just simply by the type of industry they're in? Or what's a good way for them to go, you know what, we think this is a good fit, but we need to confirm that.
So mapping out which areas of their career from beginning to end you have your gaps in, and then talking to people that are stuck at those constraints, because solving this problem in education becomes about meeting your members where they are. If they have financial or economic obstacles, if they don't understand the value, if they don't know what they want to do, like really looking at the people that are in those positions and then determining whether or not it's something that you can meet the demand for, or if it's something just requires higher ed. I mean, higher ed's been under a lot of fire. And what it's doing to that universe is it's causing institutions to do things in a much better way that really meets the students' needs. And so
Hmm.
it's something that they're struggling, just like the associations are, to be able to dynamically serve, because they're having to think about micro credentials and a lot of the things that associations have really doubled down on.
Yeah.
But you're going to see institutions really shifting into looking at investing in education in ways that you can really just pop into what you're doing to solve problems for your members.
I love that. I love that. I want to put another question in the chat for the group, and then we can take some questions from the group too. I know you've got some sort of wrap up stuff to talk about as well, but let me just drop this in here because you kind of hinted around at this, Jen, but I think like for the group, not for you, but for the group, how do you see member expectations changing over the next few years, specifically around education? So a lot of folks are saying, yeah, we offer education. We talk to them about what education they like and they want and they need. what are you hearing back? What are the kinds of things that you feel are going to change? I think AI might come in as an answer, but for
Mhm.
the group, what are you seeing out there?
Well, I think
Yes.
as
Let's see what answers come in, and then we
oh,
can
good.
sort
Yeah,
of
let's do that.
let's see what the
I
group
love
says
it.
here. So financial and time constraints, yes. More leadership development, have it be free with membership,
Mhm.
business support to help be successful, better range of topics. That's a great one related to their jobs, yes. Wanting more for less around segments, shorter attention spans. That's a really good one. Somebody had to say it. Budget conscious, soft skills. Yeah. So, AI will help make it personal, which will save time and money. Ad hoc, interactive clinical education on demand via AI. Yeah. So all, sort of things, but I think the takeaway on this, Jen, if you're looking at these two, is that there's a lot of things that are going to be changing as we move forward around members' expectations. And I think one of the things to think about, and please give the color commentary on this, but um, is that still education, while now we can see how it can come in different forms, whether it's institutional or private or proprietary or business or from the industry or from the association. What I don't see is anyone saying people don't feel like they need to be educated anymore. So, I mean, I think, what's the case there that says all these changes are going to happen for sure? Um, but the fact is, some form of educational pathway is going to be important.
Yes. And I think with Workforce Pell, that's something that on a state by state basis, they're really trying to solve for that gap between what employers really need and the skills that even college graduates are coming out with when they leave college, and what existing educational resources are able to provide. I think we're going to see a shift in, who's driving those conversations. It's so interesting to see this roll out at the state level and on a state by state basis for them to let
Yes.
workforce boards really advocate for in-demand careers. And that's really a call to action for associations too. If you Google this and well, however you search the internet these days, and look for on a state by state basis, like who is making these decisions in your state and can you get involved? Because right now, all of this guidance is being rolled out and who's really being represented, and what in-demand career areas are being represented in these courses that are approved is all in flux and will continue to be in flux. And so
Yeah.
there's really an
Right.
open door for you at the associations to be able to get involved in those conversations.
Yeah. 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 So, I mean, let's open it up a little bit and then you can sort of do a wrap up based on all the stuff we've talked about here at the end. But if anyone that's attending has a question for Jen, I think it's a great time to sort of pop those in the chat as well. We've covered a lot of good ground, Jen, I think. So, but curious to see what other thoughts folks have, questions, opinions on the topics, any of the above will take. And while people are thinking about that, Kelly had a great response to the last question, which was quantifiable ROI from the members. I mean, people want to know that they're getting something, not just for their money, in my opinion, but for their attention and their efforts. And I think that's going to be a big challenge, and it's something across not just education, but everything associations do to make it, make it be as quantifiable ROI as possible.
And one of the things that the way we consume social media has impacted is the amount of time that we want that education to take, right? Like asking someone to sit down for
Yes.
a part-time degree program that is 4 years typically, that will take them 6 to 7 years to complete, is a much different ROI um,
Yeah.
to someone than it is to take a 15-minute course that they can watch on their phone and easily search on your site to find and complete.
Yeah, and also an opportunity for associations and how they, outside of degree-oriented things, but how they provide education from their organization out to the world. I
Right.
think there's a lot to be learned there as well. So, yeah. So if you want to, while we're waiting, if anyone else has any questions out there, feel free to let them come in. But Jen, do you want to go ahead and do your sort of the wrap up of where you were headed with all this, and we can go from there.
Yeah, let's do it. Sorry, my screen isn't unfreezing here.
That's all right. You're on we're seeing the infrastructure layer slide.
Sorry, these Zoom updates are a lot in one day.
Yeah, no, that's all right. I think you just had a next steps slide beyond this one
Yeah,
anyway, so we can just
yeah,
kind of talk through why don't you just talk
yeah,
through next step? There it is.
yeah.
Just leave that up. That looks great. That's fine.
All right, great. Awesome. So I think as in terms of next steps, one of the ways that you can tackle this is to look at the six populations and really map your member data against it in the next 7 days. Look at where the gaps are and look at what your mission is and what you're looking to really accomplish in terms of strategy this year, and map one of these populations out to focus on. Another thing to do is potentially activate the household. So a membership benefit, offering something like that that allows you to extend the education benefit to their family members, really establishes you as a leader in education and someone that they turn to when they need to make big investments in education. And then look at launching one pilot, pick a pathway, pick one of those populations that really speaks to you that you haven't really focused on, and find a time, like a look at reinvesting just a small percentage of your time in a very busy schedule with doing a lot of things, to really work on establishing that pathway and look at a percentage that you want to increase it by, and build out that plan and really lean into it, and then look back in 3 months or maybe
Yeah.
even on a monthly basis and look at where you are as you roll this out. um, and then then knock out the next one. And so it doesn't need to be an all at once, but really looking at the biggest opportunities and what a 4% lift would do, in terms of retention and providing member value.
Yeah, cool. And uh, Jen's contact information is in the chat if anyone wants to talk further about any of this stuff. Of course, she's available too. And there you go. Here's a final.
Of the six populations that we talked about today, which one do you feel, just like off the top, is the most underserved in your association today? Future members. Yeah, I love that one. That was a lot of fun to
Hmm.
put together for today.
A lot of A's.
Yeah. So if somebody who typed A, what is the biggest reason why that is your underserved population? Is it due to aging workforce? Is it due to just what is the reason for that? I love that. Decline in the profession. Yep.
Mhm.
Awesome. Cool. In terms of any other questions that came up as we went, are there any questions that I can jump into and answer for you today? Also, contact info on the screen if you'd like to, reach me in another way, if it's a more like one-to-one question. Difficulty to engage young professionals in leadership positions.
Mhm.
They go to specialized schools to get a license to practice in your state. Love that. It's easy to reach those who are already a part of the association in some way. It's more challenging to build awareness among those that are not.
Mhm.
100%.
Yeah. Barrier to entry for them, we're addressing with a first-year discount to those who have graduated. Yeah. Great feedback, you guys. Really good. So Nicole, check in with you real quick. We're at 152.
Oh, I can't hear you, so sorry.
Sorry, I
Mhm.
clicked, but it didn't unmute. Sorry. Yeah, so if there's no other questions right now, what we can do is go ahead and close out. And if people come up with a question, we'll have a little time at the end, and people are welcome to stay, hang out, and chat if they'd like to do that. Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll hang out for sure.
All right. I'm gonna go ahead and take the screen share back because
Awesome.
I've got
Thank you.
one last question for